Good evening. It's 6:30, and as you know, we like to start on time. There are over 20 people on Zoom, which means that I, as well as you, when you speak, must use the microphones, okay? Because any of you who has been a participant on a Zoom call know how frustrating it is not to hear when other people ask questions, make comments, etc. So Bruce has a mic on that side and Alva has a mic on that side. So we should do our best to include our friends wherever they are in the conversation. I have to admit that I never thought that a mayoral race would ever be a subject that I would discuss in a synagogue. I have to tell you that even when I lived in New York, I didn't care much about local politics. I remember after September 11th, when Rudy Giuliani didn't really want to stop being a mayor and tried to extend his term beyond what the law permitted him. It didn't work out. It did work out for Mike Bloomberg about a decade later, but that's a different story. But you know, just as important as New York is, who cares about the mayoral race until this year? Until this year, especially, no, I'm not saying people care about it, but not to a degree that it seems like almost every rabbi talks about it, gives sermons. Every Jewish organizations try to mobilize people to do things. It's like the biggest thing that happened to the Jewish community in the United States. And it all started in June during the primaries of the Democratic Party when Cuomo lost to Mamdani. I don't know how many of us knew who Mamdani was prior to these primaries, but now everybody in America knows who Mamdani is, and the opinions about him are split. Mamdani is a 34-year-old man who was born in Uganda. That's not a conspiracy, it's a fact. So he's No, I have to tell you, the things that I read and heard recently, I should have just written them all down. Okay, so it's not like the story with Obama, okay, no, that's a fact. He was born outside, so he'll never run to be a president no matter what. He is an assembly member representing Queens. We didn't know much about him because he didn't really have an opportunity to do much. He's only 34 years old, but apparently he is extremely charismatic, and I watched some of his interviews and YouTubes and debates, and he's good. He's good. When it comes, forget about the politics right now. He is good. No, wait. Wait. That's exactly, thank you. Because that's exactly what I don't want to do in this class, because what we are planning to do, and we started it when we talked about Gaza, like 2 months ago, whenever we did it, is not to convince anyone, because I can tell you no one around these tables will change her or his mind based on what I would say or anyone else. The idea is really to learn to go much deeper than the headlines, to look at some of the nuances and maybe to come up with a different perspective, not a different opinion about Mamdani. I don't try to convince anyone. That's really not the goal here. And it's easier for us, we're Floridians. I don't know how many of you are voting in New York. Anyone here? You're voting in New York? You can't, no, I think many people came from New York, but you know, after all, it's the issue of New York, but obviously became a major Jewish issue. According to the last polls I read, Mamdani still leads in more than 10%. And the odds are that he will win. It's super weird that the options for the Democrats in New York, which are the majority, were between Cuomo, who resigned as a governor after he had some sexual harassment issues and miraculously reappeared, and Mamdani, who we will look deeply at what he says and thinks about Jewish issues, about Israel, is certainly not known as a lover of Israel, and some would say not a lover of the Jews. But he's still going to be the mayor of New York City. He's not going to be a congressman, he's going to be a senator, he's not going to be the president. He's a mayor of a city, and as important as New York is, and it is, and we all love New York, it's still a city, not even a state, okay? So, but we're all alarmed, and I read some of the sermons that important rabbis in New York gave, and even I listened today to a podcast from the Hartman Institute. People are normally moderate, but Yossi Klein Halevi, who is a person I follow, a scholar there, used the word churban, destruction, but this specific word, and he used it only in Hebrew, even though the podcast is in English, because when a Jew hears churban, they think about the destruction of the second temple in Jerusalem. So he equates the potential winning of Mamdani at 2025 to the destruction of the temple at the year of 70 that really devastated the entire Jewish community and brought exiles and killed hundreds of thousands of people. Why do we care so much? Why it hits us? And I would say, I know that for me personally, way beyond intellectually, it's visceral. And I will hear from you, but I want just to share a few facts which are really important. 1950, every fourth person in New York was a Jew. Over 25% of New Yorkers in 1950 were Jews. How many Muslims? None or very few, not even statistics. 1981, the number went down to 16%, but still not really, we don't know about Muslims. They started to arrive later. But in 2018, the Muslims in New York were 9%, and the Jews, I don't have an accurate number, but the estimate for 2025 is that the Jews in New York are about 11%, approximately 1 million people, and the Muslims are 11%, about 1 million people. Okay, so if in the past nobody could win the election in New York without the Jewish vote, well, it's not the case. Still important, still 1 million people, still about 11%, but you don't need to have even the majority of the Jews. And we Jews don't like it. We like to think of ourselves as much more powerful, and we were powerful in some areas in the country, but we are getting less and less influential. And the mayor is probably going to be a person who is not afraid of the Jews. And I don't know if you paid attention in the past, but before every election, you see the candidates go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, going to Crown Heights in Brooklyn, and trying to be nice to the Jews and promising a lot of things and giving tons of money, because the assumption was you have to be good to the Jews, and by proxy, you have to show your loyalty to the state of Israel. Cuomo still assumed that that was the case, that nobody who is against Israel has a tiny chance to win the election in New York City. And here we are seeing that this theory is crashing. One can win the election even in the city that has the most Jews probably in the world. Maybe Tel Aviv is bigger, I don't even know. But still 1 million Jews live there, and the candidate can say awful things against Israel, can call himself proudly anti-Zionist, can talk about Israel committing apartheid, genocide, and probably will be the mayor. So I think that's a reason that we feel like, we are defeated. It's not because Mamdani is going to do something that will directly hurt the Jews or Israel. I don't think he will have the power, but we don't like to lose. And this is just another punch we get. We are less important than we used to be, than we thought we should be. Another thing is the split of the Jewish community. Even the lowest number that I read said that about 40% of the Jews in New York will vote for Mamdani. That's the lowest. The highest is around 50. Okay? So it's not only that it can be anti-Israel, you'll also get a major support from the Jewish community, something that was hard for many of us to imagine. How 40%? And I read what people said about these Jews, awful things, that's exactly what I want to avoid today, because we can disagree with them, but they do what they do. We can argue with them, but that's what they choose to do, and we will talk about why they end up going to do just that. And the third thought that I want to bring before I open it to a larger discussion is my personal belief, and please take it as it is. I believe that if Trump didn't win and there wasn't October 7th, there wouldn't have been Mamdani. Because many of the New Yorkers who vote for Mamdani vote against Trump and vote against Netanyahu. And I will elaborate on that point. But I really think that Mamdani rose to such great popularity because for New Yorkers, who for the most part like neither Trump nor Netanyahu, this is the guy. And you can ask yourself, a rational person cares about a mayor who will clean their streets, pick up the trash, make the subway run on time. Who cares what he thinks about Israel, about Netanyahu? But that's not how the world works today. And if Mamdani positioned himself as the opposite of Trump, as the anti-Netanyahu, he said explicitly that if Netanyahu arrives in New York, he's going to arrest him, okay? For many Jewish people, many New Yorkers, but many Jewish people, and in New York, many of the Jewish people are liberal and ultra-liberal. Fine, wow, he's our guy. Yeah, so he said things we disagree. Most of the Jews, even in New York, are Zionist. But it's okay, he's anti-Zionist, we can live with it. But as long as he hates Netanyahu and he's going to fight with Trump, we're happy. So I think that this is the kind of the environment in which we live today, and I think that's why we have this visceral reaction to Mamdani, and that's why other people either hate him, fear him, or love him and support him, even when he vocal about things that they just don't believe it's true. Now, I just have to say it because we're going to focus obviously on Israel and Jewish issues, but Mamdani has some other interesting idea besides being anti-Zionist. His main topics are housing, he wants to build more, and he wants to freeze rent control, which, as you know, it's a huge issue in New York City. And correct, and I was tempted, and I read some interesting articles, and many economists believe that it's a mistake, but this is not for us to discuss tonight. But many people support it, freezing the rent control that keeps going up and promising to build more. He has an interesting idea of building some not-for-profit supermarkets, one at least in each borough, to sell food at cost. He is, I should have said it before, his political affiliation is democratic socialist. Okay, so he focuses on the poor, of the disadvantaged, of the disenfranchised. So there are places in New York. When we think New York, we think Upper West Side, Upper East, all the fancy places where we want to walk. But New York also has horrible neighborhoods in Queens, in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, okay? And there are places there that no reputable supermarket chain wants to open a store. You cannot make money, tons of crime, you don't want to be there. So people have to eat junk, they don't have access. And that's not only in New York, it happens in many parts of the country where you see the dollar stores take over because other chains don't, and they sell junk instead of good nutritional food. So he has this interesting idea of not-for-profit supermarkets, especially where there aren't good supermarkets. He wants free buses. He wants free or close to free daycare. Okay, this is his platform. It's a serious socialist platform. He says, I'm here for the poor. I'm here to help those who really need help. And how is he going to pay for all of that? He's going to tax the rich. And New York, probably, I didn't check it, but somebody has more rich people than any other place in the world, probably by far. So,
Rabbi, do you want to set up a mic?
No, I don't want to elaborate. He cannot do many things, but this is his platform. So I just wanted to give a full picture of who Mamdani is. Most of the time when he talks, he doesn't talk about Israel. That's not what people care about. But the Jews, please, that's not the kind of the class I want to have tonight. But the Jews care about Israel, and they turned it into the main issue. So before, I made a list of the 12 major issues that the Jewish people have with Mamdani. But before that, if anyone would like to speak, we have microphones on both sides, and please use the microphones.
Here we go. Good evening. My name is Stephen Stein, and this topic brings so much conversation that is in me that I don't even know where to begin, but one of the main issues is I believe the growth of the Islamist people in this country is a plan. I'm not a conspirator. I don't have conspiratorial problems, but I do believe, as in France and England and in other democratic countries, the Islam people have grown to such a point, and they refuse to assimilate into the countries that they go to. They will wind up someday taking over France and England, and I think that's probably one of the issues that they would like to accomplish in the United States.
Thank you.
So I have other things to say, but if there's time constraints.
Yeah, let's go around,
Okay.
because we'll discuss many other topics tonight. And I just wanted some quick remarks from people who want to speak now
I'm
or to
confused.
clarify things.
Can you clarify something? You said that the Jewish people want to feel important, and having Mondani, the mayor, makes them feel less important? Did you say
No,
that? or-
thank you for the question. Let me clarify. The Jews felt until now that without them, nobody can win the election in New York. And that was factually true. Now, another point was that the Jews were much more united as a group, the way the Muslims are. Because if the Jews are so fractured in New York, the Muslims are just the opposite. And one of the ways that historically the Jews were able to gain political power was by being unified. Okay, so in a city or a state, when you have a lot of Jews, you know, this is the Jewish group, and they are voting more or less together, so they have power. Jews are not together anymore. The Muslims, at least for now, are. So Mamdani knows that he gets close to 100% of the Muslims and Arabs, which are not the same because many Arabs are Christians and have other religions, but he's probably getting also 40% of the Jews, and that's not bad. So that's what I meant. So I meant that the assumption until now was that no mayor can win, no candidate can win the election in New York going against the Jews or against Israel. We took it for granted as an axiom. That's a fact. But that's why I brought, and I went and I checked the demographics. And that was really true when we were 25% and 20%, but now we're 10%, just like the Muslims. So we're not so powerful as we used to be, and the power that the Jews have becomes more of a myth than a fact. And if Mamdani is winning, going against Israel, how it's going to ripple outwards to national election? Because still many candidates think that they have to be nice to Israel and support the Jews, because if not, God forbid, they will not get the Jewish votes, and all of a sudden we have a major election of the most important city that somebody can go against Israel, and in many ways against the Jews, and win. So that's my personal opinion. That's not something that, I just think that we feel much less powerful than we felt until this year. And that's why this election is so important to us. But that's,
Can you hear me?
yes.
My name's Jonathan Rubens. I think there's a few other things that have to be considered. Number one, we're saying New York City, but there's really a whole New York metropolitan area. And though many Jews are in that area, it doesn't mean that they are voters within the 5 boroughs. On my way over here, I was speaking to my cousin, who you know, who's a banker, and he was telling me that some of the markets are going to start getting rattled. It's one thing to say we're going to give free rent and we're going to do this and this and this, but how do you pay for it? New York also happens to be probably the money capital of the world, certainly of this country. So what's going to happen to New York City? How are these things going to be paid for? And this is another little pet peeve of mine. I've always felt that the Israelis have not always done the best job of promoting themselves during the whole hostage situation. I don't remember constant barraging, which there should have been, about all those poor people who were assassinated at the concert. It was always the poor people who were in Gaza. Obviously, we had the hostages, but sometimes I'm wondering whether we're doing the best case to promote our own causes.
No, Israel does not do a good job promoting or explaining, but let me just go a little bit back to the Obama era, because I spoke about it for weeks. I was in tears when Bibi Netanyahu decided to speak in front of the Congress and the Senate without being invited by the president, which is unprecedented. It's something that never happens. And at that point, I gave tons of sermons about it. I said, the Jews are going to lose the Democratic Party. It won't take a year or two, but ultimately, Bibi just turned Israel into a one-party issue. And you see it. And you see more and more Democrats losing their support of, or stop supporting Israel. And it's still, we have the same Bibi. After Obama, we had tons of American presidents coming back, leaving, but Bibi is still the same Bibi. And they remember, or we remember, that Bibi came and humiliated an American president. And even people who didn't like Obama didn't like their president to be humiliated by an Israeli prime minister. And I think that the decline, at least among the Democrats, started then. And if you, and I know that you do read, it happens also to the young Republicans. People over the age of 44 or something like that, almost automatically on both parties support Israel. People under do not support Israel. In New York, about people under 44, about 70% of the Jews under 44 will vote for Mamdani. Okay? So if the average is 40, because the older one will not, they will, even if they do not like Cuomo, they will end up voting for him, but the young people wouldn't. And we see the same pattern now with young Republicans. So partly Israel is not good at doing what it does, and I sort of anticipated this comment. So this is a Fox News poll, okay? So nobody can say that it leans against Israel. And here are the numbers. In mid-October, so a week ago or so, found that 50% of registered voters in New York say they identified more with the Palestinians in the Middle East conflict compared to 44% who identified more with the Israelis. All New Yorkers, I'm not talking about only Democrats, okay? Because the young people identify more and more with the Palestinian cause, with the underdog. And that pattern definitely started several months after October 7th. So that's something for us to know. These are facts, these are not opinions. And Israel was not good, as you said, in explaining, promoting its side. Bruce?
It was explained to me by a journalist out of New York who's not Jewish, but in her 40s, that it was the perfect storm, as she described it. Bad PR on Israel's part for October 7th, and the PR from Hamas relating to all the deaths in Gaza that has taken the Jewish vote away from and put it to Mamdani. And, you know, she said it just was a perfect storm this time.
So that's what I think I meant in some way when I said that many people vote to Mamdani as anti-Netanyahu, not anti-Israel, but anti-Netanyahu and anti-Trump. And he represents these two anti, and New Yorkers don't like them. I don't see who, oh. It's all yours, Mr. Baseman.
Okay, so I don't know much about Mamdani. I don't know much about New York, all right? Except that the Eagles beat them this week.
Except for what?
Anyway, so far, the discussion seems to be that a lot of this is the result of, his success is a result of a backlash against, against Israel and so forth, things we should be scared about. He's not going to pay attention to Jews, things we should be scared about there. So I have sort of a question, because obviously you've done some research on this. Is it also possible that, or how much of this is also the fact that people feel as though they're falling behind, that no one cares about poor people anymore in this country, or underprivileged people in this country, especially with the current situation that we have. And here you have somebody standing up and saying, I'm going to reduce costs, I'm going to reduce cost of living. Now, granted, I understand a lot of this doesn't sound as though it's feasible. But I'll tell you something. One thing we learned last November was that current state of the culture of this country is immediate gratification. And if somebody stands up there and says, I'll solve all your problems, we tend to, not we, but collectively tend to believe that. So now you got a guy that I think caught on to that and said, all right, I could solve these problems. Now maybe he can solve these problems, but if you've got a big population there that feels underprivileged, forgotten, and the costs are running rampant, and they got somebody that's coming in there and saying, no more status quo, I'm going to try to fix it, how much of that is contributed to his success? That's the first question. And then I just want to make a comment, because I do understand and appreciate the first comment that was made about that we got to be careful. You can't trust the Muslims, and the Muslims have a conspiracy, and they don't assimilate, and they're going to take over the whole country, and they're taking over France, blah, blah, blah. I got to tell you something. It's the same thing I heard about Jews. I mean, isn't that the basis of anti-Semitism? And when we hear that kind of stuff, that the Jews are a cabal and a conspiracy and Soros and blah, 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 we get all, this is ridiculous, it's bullshit, it's crazy, excuse me, it's craziness. Maybe the Muslims are doing it successfully, but I got to tell you, it sounds awful familiar to me.
Thank you. Let me just say one thing. What you said before, I read an article, I don't remember who wrote it, who said that a vote for Mamdani is an act of faith. Because we don't know if he'll be able to lower costs or to build more or to whatever, but at least he gives us faith that something can change. And Cuomo is just another old Democrat like Schumer, like others who just were not very successful recently. They didn't bring enough change, and they want to identify, or at least there is a chance for something to happen with Mamdani and nothing to happen with somebody from the old guard who already failed nationally, and now it seems to be failing in the city. Thank you.
Jeff Burfond. First of all, I wanted to disagree with the point you made about Mamdani is only this popular because New Yorkers are against Netanyahu and because Trump won. First of all, any Democrat who's going to win and run and win in New York is going to be anti-Trump and anti-Netanyahu. The fact that Mamdani has gotten this popular is because of the vast amount of illegal aliens and foreign-born in New York. 32% of all people living in New York City now are foreign-born. And a lot of it is because of the huge influx of illegal aliens that have come into New York in recent years. A number of them Muslim and a number of them supporting Mamdani. A number of illegal aliens do vote, unfortunately, and they sneak into the system and vote. They also are related to other Muslims in New York City who do vote, and he's getting their support. But the second point I want to make is this is not a one-off. Mamdani is just not by himself some character who's coming to New York, and there's nothing like this throughout the country. We have repetition of him already throughout this country. We have Brandon Johnson in Chicago, who's anti-Semitic, is for open borders, and is for no bail. We have Mayor Bass in Los Angeles, a former Fidel Castro confidant, who is also anti-Semitic, open borders, no bail. We have Mayor Wu in Boston, same thing, anti-Semitic, open borders, no bail. This has really become something that has taken over our major cities, where we have socialist/communist candidates who are coming in and becoming mayor of major cities. And now we have the same thing about to happen in New York. So this is not just something that's appearing out of nowhere. This is a trend that is happening in our country and something we really have to be concerned about.
Thank you, but let me make, no, please, we're just discussing here. I want to continue to have this kind of discussions if everyone can speak honestly, openly, listen to everyone else. This is not a TV debate. I really want to keep it like that because I came to learn from you. And I hope that you came to listen fully to each other, agree, disagree, but learn something. Nobody's convincing anyone. I said it in the beginning, and I'll tell you that. Now, you mentioned socialist, few of you, like it's a bad word. Many of the Jews, first of all, Israel was established as a socialist country. So you have to remember that. There is nothing more communist than a kibbutz, right? So the whole idea of communism is the kibbutz. It failed and Israel is not, but for many Jews, in the beginning of Israel, the hero was Stalin. Many of the men had their mustache just looking like him. So for many Jews, socialism is not bad. And even today, a lot of Mamdani's supporters say that they do it because what he talks about is socialist ideas are what they study as what we call tikkun olam, right? Is repairing the world. So I want you to understand that some concept that might be offensive to some are very appealing to others, and they're appealing because they are Jews. So the idea of equality, of affordability, of housing, of feeding the poor, all these things, wow. So yes, he doesn't like Israel, but he's doing exactly what we want as Jewish people. Okay, so it's something. But I want to continue this discussion now and to go deeper because, again, I always believe that it's all about the details. And I wanted to look at what Mamdani said that for many people, even those who are left of center, said, that's not legitimate arguments. You are not just say, I don't like Israel and Netanyahu, but you position yourself as an anti-Semite, okay? And this is really interesting stuff here. So the first thing is Mamdani denies the Israel's legitimacy as a Jewish state. He does not say that Israel does not have a right to exist. He said it a million times. Israel definitely has a right to exist, which I hate when people say it because it implies, but that's my opinion, that maybe Israel doesn't have it. I think since 1948, Israel is a fact. It's not that I support, it existed for almost 80 years. So it's not that I need somebody to tell me that Israel has the right to exist. But put that aside, there are too many people use it. But he says not as a Jewish state, okay? And that's a big thing because for many of us, especially those who consider ourselves as Zionists, that's the whole idea of Israel, okay? The UN allowed this little tiny piece of land to become a homeland of the Jews, okay? This is the only Jewish state in the world. And the whole concept that is a state with an official or prime religion is not rare. Many Arab countries are Muslim countries, okay? So it's not something that, or there are many countries that are defined by an ethnic group. So it's not that Israel is so unique that it's a Jewish state. So they would say, you know, if Mamdani really cares about full democracy, that no country in the world is allowed to have a main religion, okay, we'll accept it. Philosophically, we can deal with it. But singling out only Israel, the only state in the world of the Jews, and again, it's not something that the Jews occupied, it's the UN proclaimed Israel as a Jewish state, like Pakistan became a Muslim state, right? When they separate India from Pakistan. What do you want from Israel? So if you want, fight with some 50, 60 different nations that have the same status. Why Israel? And the reason they say, because you hate the Jews or you hate Israel. Okay, so this is singling out Israel when there are dozens of other countries that have more or less the same status. Okay, so this is the number one thing. And Mamdani continues to say it. And one of the things that I have to admit impressed me, I'm not saying I support him, so I feel, he sticks to his difficult statements. He doesn't walk back. And he got opportunities, but he doesn't. And even if you ask him tomorrow, he will say, I don't believe that Israel should be a Jewish state. Israel should be a state that gives complete equal rights to the Palestinians there, to the Jews there, to the Christians, but not a Jewish state, which, according to some definitions of anti-Semitism, this is not only anti-Zionist statement, but an anti-Semite, okay? When you say that the Jews do not deserve their own state, okay? So this is a major thing. Any comments about it? You must have. No, it's for the people at the house. They cannot hear.
I just want to say I read something on the internet about Martin Luther King when he was discussing something with a student. The student was making anti-Zionist remarks, and Martin Luther King said, what you're saying is anti-Zionist, which means you're against Jews, which means what you're saying is anti-Semitic. So Martin Luther King many years ago equated anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism.
Yeah, now according to some very well accepted definitions of anti-Semitism, being anti-Zionist, meaning saying that Israel should not be a Jewish state, is an anti-Semite thing. And some people would even say that, many people say anti-Zionist, and they just use the word Zionist as a synonym for Jewish. So, oh no, I love Jews, but I hate the Zionists, so I hate the Israelis or Israel. Well, come on. So this is one major thing that made really people who are even center and left of center say, no way, any Jew should vote for Mamdani only because of that, okay? Because he really crossed the line. You can criticize Israel 24 hours a day. You can hate Netanyahu, and you've been here enough to know that I didn't say nice things about Netanyahu since I came here. For many reasons, perfectly fine, perfectly legitimate. You can do many things, but to say that Israel should not or has no right to be a Jewish state, that's where the line is, and he crossed it. Dick, did you want to?
One observation I'd like to make about Mamdani. I find it interesting that he's running for the mayorship of New York City, yet what does that have to do with your political position on the Middle East? Nothing. So to me, he's nothing more than a politician who found the right vein to get into and expose or exploit that vein. I don't think he's honest with himself, nor is he honest with American people. Because once you start walking that path and going after the issue of Israel and whether or not they're apartheid, et cetera, you've uncovered that scab intentionally for vote-getting purposes only. That's my comment.
Of course, but I have to tell you, every politician should be a politician. Sometimes I hear politicians who run, say, I'm not a politician, so don't run. This is the game. He plays the game very well, obviously, okay? But that's really why we are here, because who cares what is his opinion about Israel? Who cares what's his opinion about the subway and garbage collection? No, seriously, that's what the mayor does. But obviously, as you say, it's right. He found a great thing, and he was the first to recognize that being anti-Israel not only does not risk your odds of being elected, actually increases it. He read these numbers that the Jews forgot that, oh, these are only 10%, and I can get about half of them to support me anyway. So why not? So that's why it became such a big issue. A second issue with him, he uses the word genocide, describing what Israel has been doing in Gaza constantly. In the last debate, he used it 3 times, okay? And that's part of it. He goes with his mission, and he wants to provoke people, okay? So he uses the word genocide and he uses the word apartheid to describe the state of Israel. Now, what his supporters say about it, and again, many of them are Jewish because 400,000 Jews are going to vote for him, something like that. The academic definition of genocide, and there were a few serious articles in the papers last year, do fit to what Israel, or one can read what Israel is doing in Gaza or did in Gaza as genocide. The number of civilians and the targeting of many civil buildings and people and the killing of 75,000 and tens of thousands of kids and the whole thing. If you just read the academic definition of genocide, which I did, you can read, I'm not saying that that's the case, but one hypothetical, or academically speaking, can say, yeah, Israel committed the genocide in Gaza. Now, the opponents of Mamdani said, genocide is a Holocaust. They call it the Holocaust reversal. You take us, the Jews, who were victims of the greatest genocide ever, a real genocide. 1/3 of our nation was erased, and you turn it against us. So you Jews are no longer the victims. You're not just the victims of genocide, you are now those who commit genocide. Okay, and I have a problem with a person who so freely, again, in academic circles, you sit with 11 colleagues in a class at NYU and discuss the definition, and that's very nice exercise. But to be on national TV constantly and calling it genocide and adding the idea of apartheid, you definitely want to mark yourself as anti-Israel. You cannot say, oh, I love the Jews, but. So this is an interesting thing that we need to know, and again, pushed many people who could have supported him because of his liberal views, because of what you call he calls it socialist views, that they can either live with it or even support it, but oh no, don't call my army, the army of my country, genocidal. The other thing that, Mr. Decter.
My name is Mike Decter. In 1950, some of the statistics we spoke about, there was every Jew in Europe and Russia trying to come here. They came here with their brothers or sisters, their brothers and their sisters. So we can understand the New York population. Bobby and Zadie stayed, and either you went to Miami Beach or the kids went to Pittsburgh. Today, as this diaspora has taken place, and we're focusing in on New York City, and you brought to the attention, it's greater New York. There's a whole lot of big areas.
There are about 400,000 Jews in the greater New York.
There's a distinction, I think, and I'm not trying to zoom back to the globe as opposed to, between Jews and Israel. Paul and I have the opportunity once or twice a year to spend some time with people in a mountain that aren't even close to understanding what Judaism is. There's basically 2 other religions, and that's it. So they love Israel. You can drive down a country road, and you will see a church with an Israeli flag and an American flag. 2 blocks later, you'll see another church with a swastika and an American flag. And down the road, you'll see a barn with there's a new neo symbol type thing rather than the swastika. They love Israel. When I tell you those people say, drop the bomb and get it over with. Just take it out and take over. So it's, but as far as the individual Judaism, I don't think a lot of people really see it the way we're trying to define it, from the outside looking in, as far as what we're presenting here, the inside looking out. So because we've spent this time with these people, I mean, you know, some of these people are going, yeah, let's go get them. And they don't mean to go get the Jews.
Thank you. Let's move to.
I'd like to say one thing. Genocide, I think you have to show intent, as Hitler did. But I don't believe that Israel showed any intent on
No.
committing genocide.
I'm not saying that Israel committed. I'm just saying
Well,
I bring two sides of the argument.
But all these people, they say these things that aren't true. They're lies. I mean, there's no apartheid in Israel. I mean, there are many different kinds of people living in Israel that get along, and everybody has a right. It's a democracy.
And this is a fascinating debate, really, if you can apply the term apartheid. Again, the official academic term of apartheid to Israel, I tried, I studied it, I don't think you can. You can, though, apply genocide according to the academic definition to what happened in Gaza. I'm not doing it, okay? But I can see how somebody will just follow the official definition and apply to what happened. So that's what these people say, no, it's just, you know, that's what Israel does. It's not that he hates the Jews, but for most Jews, no, it doesn't sit well with us. And the fact that you have to use it is just an excuse, again, to be anti-Jewish, not just anti-Israel.
May I ask you one question? Ever since the Jews created socialism back in the early 1900s, can you show me
Karl
one
Marx
country?
did it way before, yeah.
Way before? Can you show me one country aside small countries like maybe Denmark, Sweden, and wherever else, that socialism has ever succeeded?
Oh, again, I don't want anyone to misunderstand me. I'm not a supporter of socialism.
I know.
I'm just illuminating the side that some Jews say that it's not, you know, the first socialist, Karl Marx, right, was a Jew. And I never thought it was a coincidence, because when you read the prophets, when you read the Bible, you know, socialism, when you just look at the theory, not at the way it was exercised in Russia, in China, in other places, but when you just look at the theory, so wow, this is what the prophets wanted. They wanted equality, okay? They didn't want one person to control. They didn't want this huge gap of income. No, that really, but when people try to take these theories and to apply them to huge countries, we know where we ended up. I want to go to the next, let me just go to the next one, because it's getting, and this is super important, and then I'll take your comment. He refused, and I checked it until even yesterday, to go against or denounce the phrase globalize the intifada. Okay, what is intifada? Intifada is an uprising, but when you say intifada in a Jewish Israel context, is the uprising of the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza against Israel. This is the time that you remember of buses in Tel Aviv just explode, of restaurants all over Israel, right? These were the horrible times when all the suicide bombs, remember that? This is intifada. So again, you can go to the dictionary definition and say uprising and people who goes against oppression, which you can say that, but when you say globalize the intifada, it means take these murderous actions of the terrorist organizations, of all the suicide bombs, and globalize them, bring them to other places around the world. So why just blowing up restaurants in Jerusalem if you can do the same thing in a kosher deli in Boca Raton, right? So that's what the people who go, that's how one understands what it means by globalizing. So some of the interviewers, and I force myself to watch and to read as much as I can, even when I don't like things and it makes me uncomfortable, but that's how you learn, try to almost convince him, just say, no, I didn't mean. He said, I am personally not using it, but I will not condemn anyone who does. And then his supporters say, yes, it doesn't mean it just encourages people, the oppressed people, to gain independence and freedom. But he refused to condemn it until yesterday. So unless something happened at 5 o'clock this morning, but he refused, and interviewers begged him. And he said, no, he said, that's not my role to criticize people for their speech. That's more or less the line that he used. But that's part, again, of his appeal. He just likes to say things and stick with them. He's not apologizing.
Rabbi, this sort of leads us into a bigger point. Most of us in this room remember when there was actually a working press and it was considered the fourth branch of government and people were called on it. I remember Watergate vividly. We now have all these conspiracy theories, channels, 150 different broadcasts. If we sneeze here, they know about it in Paris in 15 seconds, and no one's holding anybody accountable. If this happened 25 or 30 years ago, it would be different. So it's sort of cloudy skies here because somehow I don't see the situation getting any better. And it's something that I hate to say we're going to have to deal with, but we're going to see more and more of this. I mean, look what's happened in London and in Paris and many other cities, and no one's holding people accountable, regardless of what their positions are.
No, and things, I agree with you, will not get better. Let me go to the next point, and I mentioned it briefly, but that's something that he's pledging to arrest Bibi Netanyahu upon coming to New York. So I told you already, I cannot stand Bibi Netanyahu. I think he's the worst thing that ever happened to the state of Israel, but he's the prime minister of my country, and when he comes to New York, he should not be arrested. Okay, so it's my personal feelings, and probably 90% of New Yorkers feel the same about him, but he's still the prime minister, and when Mamdani says, it's just humiliating, forget about anything else, that he was going to arrest him upon landing, whoa. Now I don't want to hear it from you. Okay, that's not something that you should say. Definitely not to do. Okay, it's just preventing the Prime Minister of Israel from coming to New York, to the UN, right? You cross another major line here. What I noticed for the first time that I started not to like, that really upset me. 2 years after October 7th, things look different. And I wish this war was much shorter and many things were done differently. But the day after, like October 8th, Mamdani talked about it. And he condemned Hamas, but immediately started to talk about the occupation and the reasons that Hamas did what they did. So when I hear somebody saying, yes, you should have done it, but, and then giving all the reasons why they actually should have done it, or at least, I guess I'm getting too personal about it, and I tried not to be. I'm sorry. But condemning it and immediately giving the reasons why they did it is not condemnation of October 7th, in my opinion, okay? So that's where you can say whatever, and on record, yes, he said that Hamas did horrible things, but when you read the entire thing, or when you watch the entire thing, it didn't stop there. Had he stopped on October 8th, say, yeah, what Hamas did was the worst thing ever, and okay, that's what any normal person should have said at that point. Loving Israel, not, but they killed so many people, mostly innocent people, mostly civilians, and he said it, and the but, yes, but does not count, at least not for me. So you can say something, but immediately you disqualify what you had just said. Okay, his supporters said that he didn't really mean it this way. That's something they couldn't have, because for most of the things that I mentioned, there are different explanations and theories from political science and different places, but I just couldn't find anyone who can explain it, how a day later he, in a way, also justified what they did by condemning what they did. Just get Carol. Thank you.
I think that Israel did a very poor public relations job after October 7th. I think that Qatar has poured millions of dollars into the universities here in the United States, particularly the Ivy League schools. And they have influenced a lot of young people. I think Hamas really won the public relations job. We as a Jewish community did not fight back enough, and I don't think that enough is said about that, what the influence of big money does to universities, that does to the news stations, etc. And I think that really has to be taken into consideration.
It's part of it, and if you do research on Mamdani, you are going to read about his father, who is an academic and one of the greatest experts in the world for post-colonial theories. So Mamdani, if you read his father, what he says and does and believes in is exactly the theories of his father, looking at Israel as a colonial state, meaning the white Jews, right? All Jews are white, of course, who came from Europe to colonialize this Palestinian place, okay? So that's the theory. I super simplified it, of course, but that's what you alluded to, these theories that are being taught at some of the Ivy League school and others, but that's really Mamdani's father, who is a very reputable scholar, and Mamdani applies his dad's theory to politics. And yeah, Israel has done a very bad job explaining things, and I think if there is a consensus among all the Jews is that Israel's PR sucks. I mean, nobody, I cannot say it in any other way. I want to continue a little bit because it's getting late. Just briefly, BDS, okay? BDS is boycott, divestment, and what's the S? Sanctions against Israel, meaning avoid any investments in Israel, don't buy any Israeli goods, etc. Is a big supporter of it. Okay, he would say that it means mostly things that are made in the West Bank, but in the settlements, but he is a huge supporter of BDS, and this is considered by most Jews, again, even Jews who are left of center. This is not these crazy liberals, as some people call them, but really people who are mainstream Jews and that are even left of center. BDS is not a legitimate thing, okay? And he is wholeheartedly supports it. And as a mayor of New York, he can do things, right? He can make sure that they don't buy Israeli bonds and invest in Israeli companies, etc. So in this regard, he has some power. Economists don't think it's anything major to affect the Israeli economy, but the BDS is important. He is promoting in New York City and then the New York State, as you alluded to in other things, that the mayor of New York cannot do many things that he wants because he needs the approval of the state. Okay, so Mamdani can pass many resolutions in New York City, but he needs the state to approve it, okay, which is a different. Yeah, but you see that these things in theory are not working as they should for quite a while. There is a bill that is sponsoring that is called the Not on Our Dime Act. Have you heard about it? Not on Our Dime Act. And it's basically saying that charitable organizations in New York are not allowed to give money to Israeli settlements. Settlements. So if you want to support a settlement and you give your money to a nonprofit in New York, they cannot send the money to the settlement. So that's one of the main things that he's trying to promote. It's in the state Senate right now. I don't know if it will pass or not. Again, he said that's the UN disapproves of the settlement, so it just follows the international law. There's nothing to do with his opinion of Israel. And there is a lot of other stuff, but I think I touched upon the major things. Okay, so the major issues that I say is Israel, according to him, should not be a Jewish state, should be a great state. He supports Israel, but not as a Jewish state. The terms of genocide and apartheid that he constantly uses refuses to condemn the slogan of globalized intifada, which people can easily interpret as a call to take this terrorism outside of Israel to other places around the globe. And his innate understanding of Hamas, on one hand, condemning them, but on the other hand, shows understanding to the situation in which they live in and the condition that caused them to do what they did. And still, 40% of the Jews are probably going to vote for him. Why they do it, as I said before, and I know that there are many other opinions here, but I think that for many of these Jews is a vote against Trump and Netanyahu, because, and the other things, you know, the other alternative of Cuomo was not a good one. For many Jews, it's hard to vote for him. For many women, as a person who was accused of sexual harassment, he's just not a legitimate candidate, no matter what his opinion and how friendly he is to Israel. And as personal friend of Netanyahu, etc., just not a candidate. And as we know, voting in this case to the Republican nominee is, in fact, voting for Mamdani, because he, on a very good day, can get about 20%, but has zero chances to win. Many of you share the concern, I assume you did it as a concern, that what is happening now in New York happen in other places, but of course New York is the center of the world, and the question is how it's going to affect national elections. Now, when Israel still gets a lot of support on both sides, from both parties, but when candidates start saying, oh, we don't really need to support Israel, and people can easily win and probably even get more power by going against Israel, and we cover only the Democratic side. I can give a whole lecture about the Republican one, because as you know, many serious Republicans are against supporting Israel, okay? many major ones for different reasons. But so what's going to happen? Because Israel, without the political support and back of the United States, is not the same Israel. Israel became extremely successful and was able to defeat its enemies for 80 years, mainly because the political and definitely military and financial support of Israel. But now if politicians see that they don't really need it, well, unless they really love Israel, why supporting Israel? Okay, and that's something that should concern us even more than who will be the next mayor of New York. I think on that note, you know, I don't know if we should have nightmares, but the only thing that we as the Jewish community, at least outside of Israel, must do is to act like we used to. And when it comes to issues like the mayor of New York, to unite and to be more or less on the same page. But when we are so fractured among us, even the small number of Jews, like 6 million in the US, means very little because we spread all over. Our power was in our ability to unite around candidates and around issues, and we had the numbers. And you mentioned the state of New York, and there used to be 7 or 8 representatives who were Jewish from New York. Now there are, I believe, 2. Okay, so it's not just New York City that sees a huge decline of Jews and Jewish influence. It's the places outside of New York City that have a lot of money and power and influence, but less of a political power. So I will end here. I want to thank you for coming tonight, for listening to each other, for listening to me. I think it's a very interesting issue for us to talk about. And I don't remember when is the next time, but I try to dig out the most unpleasant issues to discuss. And we do it, I think, with a lot of respect and listening and considering what other people say. Thank you. And let's see, maybe this discussion was completely futile because the real results next week will be different. Who knows?